going to try and set this so it won't fall off. Good morning, and thank you again for inviting me. And in the context of how I was invited, I'd like to take just a brief second to remember Mike Amos, a colleague of mine who was at the National Institute of Standards and Technology and was a walking human version of enthusiasm about personalized medicine. Mike passed away earlier this year of multiple myeloma and had been part of the program committee here. So for those who know Mike, take a moment and remember him. So I'm going to talk a little bit about getting IVDs to market with a focus, I think, on companion diagnostics. I am the director of the Personalized Medicine staff in the Office of In Vitro Diagnostics in the Center for Devices. So we see most of the companion diagnostics that are coming forward. And I think everybody before has been perfectly right. The volume is growing at almost an alarming pace, and most of it is in oncology at the moment. So how are we addressing personalized medicine within FDA? Obviously, personalized medicine means different things to different people, and what my particular group is doing is not just companion diagnostics. I have multiple jobs. We're looking at companion diagnostics, of course. That was kind of the reason why my group started, at both the policy and practice. What policies do we need, and what do we need to do in order to get companion diagnostics and drugs on the market? We need to look at our internal policies and our internal activities, as well as telling the outside what we expect from them. So we're trying to write internal SOPs and maps, and we're trying to write external guidances that hopefully will help everybody get over the hurdle of what we need to change in order to make this work well. We're also working within my group on novel technologies, including ultra-high throughput sequencing, which a lot of people call next-gen sequencing. There's no new exciting sequencing that you didn't know about. We've been working quite a lot on array-based copy number variation, which has now become suggested as a first-line diagnosis in certain disorders, and we're aware that we have not cleared or approved any of these platforms, so we're trying to find a way to get those through the FDA. We're working a lot on proteomics. Last year or the year before, we worked together with NIH on doing mock submissions for high complexity proteomic tests, so that sort of research translational group could try to figure out what it is the FDA really wants and be able to bring their platform forward. Of course, we're working in the policy issues of what we're going to do about laboratory developed tests, how we're going to manage the use of products that are labeled for research use only. Actually, not manage the use, but manage the marketing and promotion of such products, and then various other little things that are going on. Congress is, of course, quite interested in what we're doing now, as well as an increasing number of stakeholder groups, like the PMC, pharma and bio, AdvaMed, are all driving us towards getting something done that's really going to help them. And then we're addressing a lot of scientific questions. We're working with internally the National Center for Toxicological Research, and we'll have some publications coming out soon on that, and with several other groups at NIH and so on. So FDA does kind of have an overall view of personalized medicine, and if you've been paying attention to what FDA says in public, you probably will have perceived this. Commissioner Hamburg talks quite a lot about her commitment to personalized medicine, and I speak to her reasonably frequently, and she really is committed to it. I know that it's part of her performance plan for this year, and you don't put that in your performance plan if you're not planning on making it a reality. Dr. Spielberg, as Larry mentioned, has joined us now. He's in the unfortunate position of having to manage 3 medical product centers in addition to the Center for Tobacco. So I'm not sure that the 3 to 6 months that he's been there, he really even understands whether he's in Kansas anymore, or I guess that's actually Missouri, right? Kansas City. Sorry, that was an inside joke. I know he does have a very strong personalized interest in personalized medicine, and that we will be taking his advice and trying to move things along according to the way he wants it to go. And I know that he is initiating the Office of the Commissioner coordination of personalized medicine, which has been needed for quite a while. So I have a typo here for my own center. The three centers, the medical product centers, are the Center for Devices, or CDRH, Center for Drugs, or CDER, Center for Biologics, or CBER. We are all actually working together. And this is a fairly novel concept. Anybody who's dealt with any of the centers before may realize that in the past we didn't spend a lot of time talking to each other or worrying about each other's laws and regulations. Now we have lots of crossover, lots of issues we have to address together. And we are working together, and working together pretty nicely, if you ask me, to identify what issues are coming up, what we need to resolve, how are we going to create solutions that, in most cases, I have to tell you, we try to take the most streamlined approach rather than going into, let's create a whole new set of regulations or whatever to cover personalized medicine. We're trying to use what we have. We'll see whether that works or not, and take cues if it doesn't. So we've been working on our internal practices. We talk to each other a lot. We actually know who's who in different centers, which was a big step. And then, of course, we've been working on internal guidance together. External guidance. So my role in personalized medicine, I'm in the Center for Devices, so I primarily worry about device issues. I have 4 dedicated staff, including myself, that work on personalized medicine, and you may suspect from a 2-day conference with lots of attendees like this that that's not quite enough, and we would like to have more, and we'll be trying to grow the program a little bit over the next year, I think. We have about 10 review staff distributed throughout our review divisions who actually work on the companion diagnostic part of the co-development. And they're not specific people, it's just 10, it's kind of like a cloud. It moves over, we pick people when we need them, we pick people with the right expertise and people with enough experience to really recognize the complexity of these submissions. So we have several people who are very expert in the various review divisions, so you can be pretty sure you're going to get somebody who knows what they're doing. And then we also have Bob Becker, who's our Chief Medical Officer. He's not actually part of my staff, but is a very smart guy who's really helped us a lot on companion diagnostics. Our current scope, of course, because I'm in the Office of In Vitro Diagnostics, is IVDs. However, much of what we're doing may extend to other types of medical devices, imaging, other kinds of diagnostics that are not in vitro diagnostics. But right now, we're kind of piloting along the IVD pathway. Personalized medicine is a large priority in CDRH. I talk to my boss and his boss, Jeff Shuren, all the time. And we realize that it requires a very careful approach within our current laws and regulations, or if we feel the need, we would have to try to develop new regulations. And we all recognize that that may be in the future, but at the moment we think we can work within what we have. So our current activities that you may be interested in is probably everybody here has seen the companion diagnostic guidance. Larry just flashed up the first page on the screen. And it was published in July of last year. We're planning to finalize it by the second quarter of this year in response to the comments. The comments we received were primarily positive, with a few questions that were repeated from multiple different sets of stakeholders, which we'll try to address. We are preparing a co-development guidance, more of a how do you get from recognizing that you have a drug and a biomarker to actually having 2 commercialized products. There are a lot of interesting issues, and we're learning as we go. Every new submission that comes in has new issues that we need to consider. So in many cases, we know what you know. In many cases, because we don't tell you about everybody we've worked with, we know more than you know. So we're trying to write that down in a co-development guidance. And it's not going to be a how-to. As Larry mentioned, there's no single way to do this. There are a lot of different ways to do it. We recognize that. We're happy with that. We just want to give the general directions rather than specific to it this way. We're certainly been working very hard on lots of other guidances. Larry mentioned the enrichment guidance, which should be out this year. Should be out in not too long, as far as I can tell. Lots of other guidances coming out from the Device Center, as Larry mentioned, that will probably be of interest to the group of people who are worried about personalized medicine. And one of the most important things that we've been doing is this internal policy building, what the different centers' roles are in decision making. When there's two products that depend on each other, how are we going to manage this? And so the companion diagnostic draft guidance actually mentions some of that, the drug won't be approved until the companion diagnostic is approvable and so on. We've been working a lot on cross-center communications. These centers have completely different cultures, different laws, different regulations, different ways of doing things. And so it's taken a whole lot of diplomacy, determination, bringing brownies to meetings, you name it, to get people sort of to recognize that each other want to work together. And especially in oncology, who we see a lot, it's working incredibly well. We've kind of come to rely on each other to answer the questions that come up. If there's a drug question, we can call them. If they have a device question, they don't hesitate to call us. And of course, we're working very hard on the issues of timing and coordination, because if we said we want the drug and the diagnostic approved at the same time, that actually requires us in our review cycle to make that happen. And it's not trivial. And we have to go back and forth between each other, and we're doing a pretty good job, I think. If the representatives from the companies who've had the recent companion diagnostic approvals, I hope, appreciate the amount of effort that went into that. So I'll talk a bit about the recent approvals. The vimurafenib, I don't know how many people can actually pronounce that. I worked very hard on it. That is a BRAF-targeted drug that was approved with the BRAF V600E test earlier this summer, was approved on a very rapid time scale. We beat the PDUFA and MDUFA dates by a lot. It was a marker-positive trial, so people have worried a lot in the past. There's a lot of discussion, what's going to happen if we don't have marker negatives? We've now witnessed with two different drugs, what happens is the diagnostic gets a selection claim. You're selecting people who are in the trials, the pivotal trials that establish that the drug was safe and effective. It doesn't predict who will benefit, who won't benefit. It says these were the people who were in the trial. Now, because the drugs target these particular molecular entities, we have a pretty good idea that that's probably right. We worked in a very coordinated manner and with sponsors. I think we spent a lot of time on phone with sponsors and working out last-minute details and so on. And we talked a lot internally. We had many, many meetings. And we came up with some interesting issues from this particular drug, is the differing review times between the drug and the diagnostic. We had to manage that. The diagnostic typically has a shorter review time than the drug, but sometimes the drug review is accelerated and they want to get it out quickly, so we had to sort of go back and forth and decide how we were going to do that. We witnessed the differing times of availability, as was brought up in the first panel, for the drug and the diagnostic. The drug was available immediately. The diagnostic had to be put in place in labs who would then verify it and so on. So we had to come up with a process to allow that to happen.